Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is the woman who knows how to set personal boundaries, Alex Standy. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Hey, guess what? Our guest just showed up.
No way.
He's here. Yeah, this is great. So we're going to bring her in.
All right.
Hey, Shelby.
Hi, I'm sorry. I looked at my calendar and it's on my calendar for tomorrow. I'm so sorry. I'm late.
Oh, well,
okay.
I'll bet you that's because of the snafu with your VA, because your VA put us on both dates, and then I canceled Friday, and they left. Yeah, well, whatever.
We're gonna have a little chat.
So, well, welcome. We're glad you could make it today. Well, we thought we were going to do the program without you. We started talking about sweeteners and how to get sugar out of your life. You know, we figured, okay, well, we'll just go that direction. But since you're here, we're going to go back to the Shelby Scarbrough show. So,
right.
I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for your grace.
No problem at all. Hey, stuff happens. That's life, you know.
Right.
I mean, if you can't laugh at it, then you're just going to be miserable. So why not laugh?
Period.
I'm glad I could log in.
You brought some mirth to us. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Perfect. Nice to meet you both.
It's nice to meet you too.
Nice to meet you too.
Let's start at the top. I mean, we need to kind of introduce you to the audience, and I find it's always better if the guest tells about themselves rather than me telling about them, because I usually get something wrong. So why don't you just give everybody like a little biography about Shelby Scarbrough and how you got to be where you are right now?
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, let's see. I was born. No. I grew up in California, moved to Washington, D.C. when I got out of UCLA, and took my first job, which was in President Reagan's White House. I had the opportunity to travel around the world with him and a team of people putting together his schedule, you know, all of the appearances and things like that. Then I went to the State Department as a protocol officer, which is sort of doing the same work, only for the incoming guests to the President of the United States. So kings and queens and prime ministers and all those boring people.
Interesting adjective.
Yeah, never a dull moment, always something interesting happening. And then I started my own business in 1990. So that was a long time ago, but it was based on what I knew how to do, which was do logistics for dignitaries. And my first client was Nelson Mandela, and then Paul II and Lech Walesa of Poland, and lots of fun people like that. Lots of trade delegations with ministers of this and that from other countries, trying to get them to buy American. And, and doing lots of big events, you know, kind of big, splashy, fun events. So, then I kind of morphed a bit, and I began to do more teaching and speaking about that kind of thing instead of the doing, because I kind of wanted my own life.
Right.
Traveling around the world with interesting people is fascinating, but it's their life that I'm helping them live, and I wanted to live my own.
Good move, by the way. I like that move.
Yeah. And then about 10 years ago, I moved back from Washington, D.C. I still kind of maintain a footprint in there, but I moved back to California to help my parents, who were doing some morphing of their family business, and helping them as they age and deal with some certain issues and things. And so I've been based in California ever since, and most recently just started co-founded a thing called the Global School of Entrepreneurship, which is an entrepreneur's MBA. It's a fully accredited MBA program with that's good for anybody who wants an MBA, but it's particularly good for entrepreneurs because of the schedule and the way, you know, so entrepreneurs can work on their business while they're working in their business.
Ah.
Okay.
And that's kind of pretty close to everything. Wrote a book.
That's the journey right there. Okay. That's good. To date, anyway.
Yeah, wrote a couple books, wrote a book on civility, and we just got a book out about my grandfather's life. He was the first to attempt to fly solo around the world, so we finally got his book out last year. And trying to get that made into a movie. So if you know anybody.
Wow.
Very cool. Yeah, that's very good. And like you mentioned, you have a couple books. You got another one coming out pretty soon too, don't you?
Yes. So I'm, the Joy book. It's called The Joy Journey. And, it's funny because I wanted a companion website that had products that were all about joy, you know, to go along with it when I got the book done. Well, I got the website done and the store done way before the book. So, I'm too busy living a joy journey then to write it all down. So, it's actually not too far out in the future at this point, but it's been waylaid, because of other interesting left and right turns along the way.
I find the combination interesting because you wrote a book about civility and you're writing about joy.
Yes.
That's, which is not, that really isn't two concepts people normally associate with each other, but you clearly do. Where do you see the association?
I do. I call them two sides of the same coin because without joy, there's not a lot, grumpy people aren't very civil.
Funny how that works.
So if you don't have joy, it's hard to find civility. And if you don't have civility, where's the joy? So to me, they're kind of one and the same. They go really hand in hand, and to use all sorts of cliches. And I do it. I put it together in my practice of civility. And I believe that might be an interesting way for people to look at their lives if they choose to. Mm-hmm. Okay. You're a happier person. I'm a happier person when I'm civil. When I'm not civil, I walk away feeling just as bad, if not worse, of what I did to somebody, chewing somebody out for something or losing my patience or something like that. I feel just as bad. So why do I want to feel bad? So it's a selfish move on my part to be civil. And therefore it ignites all those joy juices that we have, this dopamine, the serotonin, the oxytocin, all those things that our brain makes. And we can stimulate that by purposeful behavior in that direction.
Yeah. I think of it slightly differently, although I think it's more nuanced than anything else. I think of it rather in terms of civility. I think of it in terms of kindness. Yeah. If I'm kind toward people, that to me is like one step away from feeling the joy and vice versa.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, if you're not going to be civil, I mean, well, first of all, it's not kind. And second of all, you're not going to get to where you want to anyway. So
exactly.
It's not going to work.
Well, what's your definition of civil when you're writing your book?
That's a good question. So a lot of people think of civility, and even the dictionary is sort of, good behavior, kind behavior, nice behavior. And it doesn't go into a long, lengthy thing in most cases. So what I did was I took George Washington's rules of civility, which were written, in his time. And actually he took them from a French monk's guide for nobles, that was 200 years older than he was. And he put them into these rules. So there's 110 of them. And I took all of those rules and took them apart and put them back together. And I analyzed them because some of them are funny. They have, whether they stand the test of time is sort of what I was looking at in some ways. I always use the one, thou shalt not stand so close so as to bedew a man with one spittle. Well, that's a pretty good rule, especially with COVID and in general. But if you take all of those rules and all of their idiosyncrasies about them and some of things that are kind of outdated about station in life and things like that, seniors and juniors and, that kind of thing. If you take all of that kind of thing and you say, what are the real elements of that are time tested? And that is that they come down to trust and respect and honor and dignity and courtesy. And I put in things like taking responsibility, personal responsibility for our actions. So it's important to me, that's sort of the umbrella that goes over all of that. And it's not about whether I'm being treated with respect. It's whether I'm showing respect to someone. It's not whether I'm that I demand that to be trusted. It's whether I'm behaving in a trustworthy way so that I will be trusted and respected. It's within our body. It's within our mind. It's within our little bubble of our own selves to take this on and put that out in the world. It's not for anybody else to either tell me how to behave or to that their behavior is what counts. We can't change anybody. But we can change the world by behaving in the way that we hope that the world will behave. Yes. And so at least my little circle around me, my little bubble around me and the reverberations that come from that, I know, and I feel very strongly that I've had a bit of an impact, a little impact along the way on the way my little circle sees the world. And so if they then turn that outward facing and then affect the next circle out, we can hopefully affect, that all those, the butterfly effect, the ripple effect, all of those things, whatever you want to call it, we can impact the world in our own way.
And I think we actually do. We don't necessarily see it. And so that's why we kind of discount it. But I think that ripple effect is real. And it's there every time. There are no exceptions. It always comes into play. It always has an effect. And just because we didn't see it doesn't mean it wasn't there. It just means we didn't see it. That's all.
Right. And it might be because we have blinders on or we're in the middle of a hellish period in our lives or whatever it happens to be, Yeah. But the way I look at it, this my subtitle of my book, Civility Rules, is a purposeful practice, creating a purposeful practice of civility. So the idea is, here's some tools that I use to put civility into play into my life, to build respect and rapport and trust among my peer group and my friends and my family and the people around me, to be somebody who somebody might look up to in this area, to uphold certain standards, I guess. But it's not about judgment of somebody else. It's not my place to judge somebody else's behavior. I might not like it. And if I don't, then that's my prerogative to put those little bumpers around me, the barriers around me that protect me from the negative influences in the world. But I'm just trying to put positivity out there. And It's not always easy.
No. Nobody said it was going to be easy.
No.
I mean, that's why we need a practice of civility. That's why we need to work on it, because that's why the word exists in the first place. Because if everybody were we wouldn't even need to talk about what it is. It would just be what it is. But we have to put definitions around it so that people can understand and take note and work on it.
Yeah. I especially like the fact that you make it a point that it's not about somebody else's stuff. It's always about your own stuff.
That's right.
That's a big deal. That's a really big deal.
It is. And, the subtitle, Living Life with Joy in the Middle of It All, and I think that for me, 10 years ago is when it really started for me. I was on vacation. I was in Greece with a friend of mine for her kind of a milestone birthday for her. And I was not super happy. I was in transition. There was a lot of things that I could be unhappy about if I wanted to be. And I was just sort of sitting there looking in the mirror, literally getting my hair done in Greece, right? And out the back door is this beautiful Greek vista, the white domes and the blue and the white and the sea and the sky. And I was like, what the heck am I unhappy about? I mean,
right.
Who does that? You're in the middle of this amazing place. She and I both wish that we were there with some really handsome man, but we were there with each other having a wonderful time. And why not embrace that,
Yeah.
And so I said, I just need to start finding the joy in the middle of everything, in the middle of anything, in the middle of my life, in the middle. And you know what? It's in the middle of my name. My name is Shelby Joy.
Is it really?
It is.
Oh my goodness.
So I just thought it's time to embrace that. It's time to embody that. And it has been miraculous in a sense in how it has changed just about everything I do. And when I get into a pickle where I'm just wanting to scream at something or somebody or do something, I really helps me recalibrate and, put things in perspective and to walk a more peaceful, graceful, and joyful path.
The fact that you have Joy as your middle name, I think is a wonderful little sub story right there. Just because, and well, in your case, you really can't avoid it. It's your middle name. There it is. Okay. Yeah. And I've been avoiding it all this time, but it's kind of analogous to how we all ignore stuff that's right in front of our noses. In your case, it just happened to be a middle name, but we do this regularly, routinely. Human beings have a really great capacity if they are not in a good mood, or if they're not feeling like they're in control of their lives, or they're not feeling like, fill in the blank. It doesn't matter what the blank is. They can miss stuff. We all are really good at missing stuff right in front of us.
Yes. Right in front of our nose. So that's the story. That's part of the story of the Wizard of Oz and Dorothy in Oz. And so my mind, I think in pictures sometimes, and my mind goes to the ruby slippers, and there's no place like home. There's no place like home. Well, really, the lesson for her was it was always there for you.
Right.
And you just needed to see it. You needed to see it, maybe by going through adversity, maybe by going through challenges that forced you to look at your own world in a different way. And that's
that's kind of what adversity is for in one sense, to show us that stuff.
Yes. Yes. In fact, you just helped me because I'm going on another friend's podcast in the next week or so. And he does things with children's stories, and he sent me the stories that they're all done, and I needed to pick a children's story. So I'm going to pick The Wizard of Oz.
There you go.
Oh, yay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what the importance of the lessons are in those kind of things, and so, cause we can learn a lot from children's books, and, there's some great ones out there. So it's kind of fun. The simple message sometimes is the best. And we as adults can benefit from just maybe reading a kid's book every once in a while.
Yeah, I honestly believe that, and I think actually J.R. Rowling helped move this needle along. But I think we need to stop thinking of books in terms of whether they're children's books or adults' books. They're books.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the messages might it's the vocabulary level that changes, Yeah, exactly. And it comes from, sometimes complex isn't better. So
simplicity often is best. It's not always best, but it often is. And I think it's kind of overlooked.
It is. Right.
Well, and that kind of goes to this whole thing. For me, it's a simple message. Be happy. Now let me correct that. The phrase "be happy" is not actually anything in my mantra, and I don't know why it just came out of my mouth, because to me, that's an imperative, that's an order, that's a directive, and this is a process, this is a choice, this is a lifestyle, this is an evolution, this is a spectrum. It's not a light switch. And there was an epiphany for me. There was a sort of a light bulb that went on for me about finding joy, but the process of living it, the process of being it and embodying it and bring it to other people is not a switch. It's not an off and on switch. It is not a transaction. It's
I love that.
A lifestyle. So be happy is really not my mantra. It's just, I tell myself, I don't give orders to other people about this, but I tell myself, what are you doing? Breathe it in. Look for the smallest thing that you can find joy in this moment. If you're not, I said to a friend's daughter once, I wrote a letter because we were writing sort of inspirational letters. And I said, when you're not happy, when you find yourself in a place of unhappiness for some reason or discontent, go outside, look at the sky and say thank you, and walk around and find something, take a deep breath of fresh air and find something to find joy in and to be grateful for. Just something. So the butterfly or the spring day or those things are just easy for me. I can walk outside. And so I did an exercise once in a seminar that I did, a webinar. And this is in the book as well. Is to take your camera. We all have these cameras now. So take these amazing cameras and go take a walk for 15 minutes if you're in a funk. And even if you're not, if you just want to get more joy juices going and have a nice day.
Joy juices.
Walk outside.
That's what they are.
Yeah. Even if you can't get outside, walk around your apartment and find something in the micro, like zoom in on something really close and take that picture at a funny angle that you might not have been looking at it before. And even just the act of doing that doesn't even matter what the picture looks like, but you might end up with some spectacular thing you can put on a postcard or in your greeting cards or on Facebook or Instagram. But in the meantime, you're going to get something magical. Like if I just did this right now, I can just do it. I can do this and say, okay, I'm going to take an interesting portrait angle of these right in front of me. And so now what I can say, I can show you is these are right in front of me, which are.
Oh, that's a nice picture.
Lovely.
The pussy willows or whatever. So if I get up even further and closer, you start to see details that you just never knew. And here it is sitting here in front of me. And then the miracle of that is I did that with a tree outside and it looked like just moss on it. And when I got up closer and closer and closer and closer, they were tiny flowers. Well, if I hadn't taken that moment to stop and say, oh, look at that pretty green moss on that tree and just zoom in and walk up right up to it, I would have never known that they were actually flowers. They're just teeny, teeny, tiny. And that just right there, it was just beautiful and joyful. And I use those pictures when I do talks and things about perspective. And it just helps reset your brain and reset those brain waves to put you in a place of being able to look at the world a little differently.
I love that exercise.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, you've actually found two ways to tie together a single concept. That's the concept of focusing. Because the camera has to focus, and when you went to that activity, you're focusing as well. Because that's what you're using the camera to zoom in and focus on something.
Yeah. Gratitude, appreciation, perspective,
that's
taking
our favorite word.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Taking a moment out to be appreciative.
Yeah, I like that. And
so
I also like that. That's a great exercise for somebody. Sorry, that's a great exercise for somebody who has trouble focusing.
Yes. Yeah, actually it is. Yeah. That's a good
It really is.
Yeah. take that moment. It's a 5-minute exercise. It's 3 minutes if you want it to be. I mean, we did it in how long? 30 seconds. So
30 seconds, a minute.
it's just, it could be anything. It doesn't matter what it is. You can make it into something different. You can make it look different. You can also realize, if you use it as another analogy, that there's lots of different ways to look at something. And just because you think that's what it is doesn't mean that's what it is. So I should rephrase that just because I think that's what it is doesn't mean that's what it is to somebody else.
Yeah, sure.
So this is where
like cloud, what did you call that? Clouds? When you look at clouds.
Cloud spotting?
Like cloud spotting. Yeah. It's like that. Everybody sees something different, but it's all the same cloud.
And so is it wrong? Is it right? Is it black or is it white? I mean, the world is a lot of gray. My dad said that to me one day and in a heated moment when I was looking at, I was in my teenage years and I was looking at something as this is right, this is wrong. And, he's like, there's actually a little more gray in the world than you're giving it credit for. So there's not everything is just really clear cut.
Right.
And we have to give the grace to, especially in the civility realm, that we've got to give the grace to somebody else to the benefit of the doubt that they're trying their best and they're not trying to be rude, that maybe they've had a bad day. And, so we give a little grace before we say, how dare you? And I rarely say, how dare you? And when I do, I feel like it doesn't make me happy to do it, but occasionally it's just, when I see injustices to other people are probably the times that I get my, hackles up and I want to go race in and save somebody and say, how dare you do that to somebody? How dare you treat somebody like that? Those are the places that I get kind of agitated, but at the same time, and so I try to look at it through somebody else's eyes. And that's a great first step, but that doesn't mean you have to come over to their side. We look at politics right now as a really good example where people believe lots of things. And there's a lot of statements that say what you believe is wrong, what you believe is not accurate. You're believing lies or you're spreading lies. Well, I don't know. I think there's a little bit more gray in there. And yes, that happens. That stuff happens.
Sure.
But if we start a sentence with I believe, and I should have probably been saying I believe this whole time, because really all it is my opinion. So, there's science around the joy. There's science around the chemicals that create joy and happiness and satisfaction and content and gratitude and all of those emotions that we have. And I could go quote it and find it, but fundamentally I'm doing this from my personal experience and my gut. It is my belief that if we act in a positive way, we will feel more positive ultimately.
Very true.
So with politics, it is my belief that this is true, and beliefs are hard to change in other people. And why is it my place to change your beliefs necessarily?
Right.
I just hope that we have a way to talk to each other, that we can respect our own beliefs and maybe find that common ground that we can build a relationship together.
You're reminding me of one of my favorite things that I have started to do in the last couple of years after a conversation I had with a co-host here on the podcast. And it's to essentially, whenever I can remember to do this, I will find myself in a situation where I'm saying that that's right and that's wrong. And I try to catch myself on that. And when I catch myself, I remind myself, don't think of it in terms of whether it's right or wrong. Think of it in terms of whether you like it or you don't like it. Take the whole morality thing out of it entirely.
Yeah.
Because when you take the morality out of it, well, first of all, it's an entirely different meaning. It's also much more honest. You want honesty? There's what the honesty is. I like this thing. I don't like that. I like that behavior. I don't like, that's the honest part of it.
Right. And then we can think introspectively.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And then the best part is there's no such thing as having a right or wrong like. You either like something or you don't.
Right.
So, if you don't like something, okay, you don't like it. Great. No problem.
That's right. And that's, there's a whole nother discussion I'm probably the less qualified to talk about, but there's a morality discussion about right and wrong, about things in society, theft, murder, things that probably we would agree on most of the list of things that are just like, okay, that's clearly wrong. But, so it's not like there's just no boundaries and that whatever anybody wants goes. But as far as our interaction with other people, 95% of what goes on in the world is actually in the middle of stuff that is a little bit more like, should you work so many late hours and the shoulding on you, right? I belong to an organization called the Entrepreneurs Organization, and we have a set of guidelines that we adhere to as members, that we buy into as members, to say, this is how we're going to behave with one another. And I think it's a really great play. We don't tell each other what to do. Because bottom line is, entrepreneurs, and all people, but entrepreneurs especially, really don't like to be told what to do. We are our own thinkers. We want to drive the cart the way we want to drive it, and sometimes we make mistakes that we could have been saved by if we had listened to somebody else's shared experience. So, but if you are told what to do, we tend to kind of go, don't tell me what to do. And so if we share an experience with somebody, rather than say, you should, so I'm shoulding on you, this way we say, in my experience, and I've tried to say that along the way here, is, look, I just have found joy in putting these things into play. If it resonates with you, why don't you try it? If it doesn't, hey, your life, your choice. But these are the things that I'm doing to be happy and healthy and try to spread joy around the world. And it's working for me, and maybe it'll work for you too. So come along with me if you'd like to.
And these things you're talking about would especially be important with an entrepreneurs group, not only because of what you said, that entrepreneurs will tend to resist anything that doesn't really fit their agenda, but it actually kind of works against what entrepreneurship is about. Entrepreneurship is about creating something that wasn't there before. The only way you can do that is kind of go against the convention.
Right.
It's just the way it works, It's kind of like saying, well, you can be an entrepreneur, but you have to do it conventionally. No, it doesn't work.
So that we're sort of a Socratic method, we're sort of the classic, like a 3-year-old child who says, why?
Yeah.
Why?
Right.
Why? Why do you have to do it that way? So that, to me, that's a fair question. And that's not meant to be persecuting anybody else. It's sort of probing and saying, well, but why do you think that? Why do you think that's the best way to be? Why, Shelby, do you think that living a life of joy is the right way to go? That's a fair question. That's a fair question. So why? Entrepreneurs are why? Why do we do that? So why do we have to do it exactly the same way everybody else has done it all, just because? Well, maybe there's a really good reason. If you ask why, you hear the reasons. But then that's an opportunity to create, to disrupt in a positive way, to create a new and better level of anything. And so I think we have that possibility in our lives too, just like an entrepreneur does in their work.
I really like that. Not the least of which because I can see, for any situation where the entrepreneur or anybody else for that matter is presented with a couple of options. Here are a couple of ways to deal with it. You can either go off and make your own mistake that I can see you're going to make, or you can listen to what I have to say, or you can kind of merge the two. You can do whatever you want with it. But when you leave it open like that, you actually open up some really important possibilities. On the one hand, the entrepreneur going out and making their own mistake that somebody else has already made can be a good thing.
Oh yeah.
They may actually need to learn that. It may actually be an important thing for them to go through as part of their journey. Well, and by the same token, you can also be somebody who, you've run into making that mistake over and over again. You're trying to figure out how to get around it. Well, that's a great time to listen to another entrepreneur because they've already made the same mistake and figured out how to get around it. Well, I know the way out. Here's the way out.
Basically, if you think of it like a life cycle of a human being, a child who's learning to walk is going to fall down.
Yeah.
And they have to learn how to fall and get back up. That's part of life. And so that's a part of the entrepreneurial process. It's not the falling, it's the getting back up. That's the important part. The one thing that as an adult teaching a child to walk, so sharing your experience with them, because as an adult, we have more experience about walking or falling.
Yeah.
If you fall, don't put your hands out, sit on your bum. I mean, just, ways to do it better, ways that to spare you pain. That's what we ultimately want to do, is keep somebody from having permanent damage from something. Right. But they have to make mistakes. People have to make mistakes and hit their head occasionally in order to get it in through their head, Hot, telling somebody that it's hot, they might have to experience hot. Hopefully it's not permanent damage.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So we have to, there's the bumper pool here, on the bumpers on the bowling alley, that we have to have some latitude to go back and forth within that in our lives, in order to understand. You can't understand joy if you haven't understood sorrow. We can't keep people from in a permanent, well, yes, you can. It's called drugs. You know, I mean, the only way, the only way to be in a permanent state of bliss is artificially. And,
Happy 420, everybody.
like, yeah, there you go. This is 420, isn't it? That's sort of avoiding reality. So what I'm trying to do is have those happy drugs, those joy juices going on in our brain every day naturally. Mm-hmm. And it's cheap and free. And so why, you know, and not damaging. It's not permanently brain damage. It's actually helping the synapses in your brain connect to things and make more positive connections with things. So we, you know, there's a lot of ways to look at the world, and that's just the way I choose to.
Well, you're resonating with us on a lot of these, that's for sure.
I like your view.
Yeah,
I mean, what's
definitely.
the alternative? In my mind, you know.
Right.
Well, there are lots of alternatives.
Live in misery. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. Hey, I've been there. I know that one.
The easiest way to do that, here's the closest, the shortest path to that. Blame other people for everything.
Works well. Yeah. Oh, that's great.
That's the fastest way to get to misery because if you think about it, you're giving your power away. You're handing your power to somebody else because you're saying, it's not my fault. I can't help that because they did that. It's their fault. They did it. Well, then you have no power to change it. So happy misery life for the rest of eternity.
Yeah.
Or until you decide to change your mind, which is what I did.
Right.
Yeah, that's it. It's our personal responsibility. Our happiness is our responsibility.
It
and
is.
I call my book The Joy Journey because the joy is in the journey. Happiness is the destination. And guess what? It's a long road. If I'm not hyper religious, but I look at it in a sense of when we're happy when we're dead. I mean, the bottom line is we're happy at the end of it. Happiness is a destination. So it's elusive. It's always out there. So if we focus on the journey, then every step of the way is going to be a happy step somehow. Each individual step is happy because you divide it up and you don't say, I will be happy when. You say, I am happy because of this conversation right now. That made me happy today. Okay.
Right.
So happiness becomes this culmination of all these little joyful moments along the way. And that's just my way of looking at it. Other people say, you know, reverse them and say that joy is the eternal bliss and happiness is the journey. But I just like the alliteration of the joy journey.
Yeah, that's good. It's funny.
And my middle name isn't Happy. So.
Right.
If
it was Happy might be a different book, but that's okay. It's a book that it needed.
I mean, I am an entrepreneur and there's a little branding going on.
Yeah,
right?
sure. Why not?
You have to.
My mantra.
Yeah.
I was thinking though, because you had the political background, especially earlier in your life. My background, I was a political science major, so I have some political as well.
Yes.
And I recall, among other things, as you were talking right there, I was recalling what Jefferson very famously wrote into the Declaration of Independence: the pursuit of happiness.
Right.
And you know, I'm realizing I always knew there was something about the phrase I didn't like. I was never really sure what it was. You kind of helped to clarify it just now. Because if you pursue happiness, you're not going to get there. The only way you're going to get happiness is if you stop pursuing it, and then it shows up.
And it shows up. So, but it is, from a constitutional standpoint, it's such a unique line in the Constitution. And I think that the beauty of that line is it's in the pursuit, the promise of the American Constitution, the promise of the Declaration of Independence, the promise of America is the pursuit of happiness, not the promise of it. So in many other countries, that's not even considered. Personal happiness is not our problem, says the government. But personal happiness, the pursuit of happiness is in our Constitution that says you as a free person can pursue happiness. I think that's a miracle, actually. And if we embrace that in this country and around the world as much as we can, then it's the right to do that. Nobody promises that. It's not the government's responsibility to make you happy.
Right.
I just want to clarify one point too, that because I've actually encountered this with people who are not, well, actually even with some people who were born in America, but I've especially encountered it with people who are, you know, born outside of America and get confused on the point. And you just made a statement that often gets made, but I want to clarify it. The phrase, the pursuit of happiness, is actually not part of the Constitution. It's part of the Declaration of Independence, which is a separate document that was written some 13, 15 years before the Constitution was written. But we often associate the two. So,
yes,
you know, if you're not living in the U.S., that's where your confusion is coming in.
Yes, the Declaration. We hold these truths to be self-evident. And I'm on the board of an organization called the Freedoms Foundation at Valley Forge. And for almost 75 years now, that organization has been around and has been working to teach American civics to high school kids and to high school teachers, civics teachers. Mm-hmm. And I think it does an amazing job. They have a great curriculum. It's interactive with, character actors like John Adams and Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin and all the kind of the founding characters that come into the classroom and teach these kids interactively and engage them in the discussion of civics so that they can have an appreciation for what these documents were and what they stand for, and have an educated conversation as to whether they work for us now. Do they need to be changed? Or why did these choose these words? And they were chosen very, very, very carefully. And has time changed so much that they're irrelevant? Well, I don't personally believe that we can have that conversation unless we understand them completely. Mm-hmm. So then have this great conversation and this debate that we need to have, a civil debate about the future of the country and our founding documents and where they all fit together. And that's the beauty of all of this. And the fact that we can have that conversation. And we should have that conversation.
Here we go.
It's hard not to sometimes.
I know. Well, we all have a temptation to do it because we do have our opinions. We do have our perspectives.
And let's try to get them based on reality, based on facts, and so the beliefs are one thing, and you can't question somebody's beliefs. You can question the facts that those beliefs are based on. Mm-hmm. And I think, but doing that in a way that helps people that by having a conversation instead of having an accusatory, you're an idiot kind of conversation.
Right. Yeah, I've been doing this podcast since 2012. So about almost 2,000 episodes. And one of the things that I've come away from it as being the biggest gain for me, I mean, certainly there have been gains for my audience as well, but the biggest gain for me is all of the different perspectives, especially the ones that I disagree with. I actually learn more from those than from the ones that I agree with. Not that I don't like the ones that I agree with. I love those a lot. And many of them become co-hosts. But the fact is I learn more from the ones that I disagree with. So I've actually learned to appreciate the perspectives I don't like.
Yes.
Which sounds really weird, but it really is true. And it's powerful and it's effective when you can get to that point because, oh my goodness, that's when you learn like crazy.
It's healthy for the world. It's healthier for the world in general and for the interactions, the interpersonal interactions in your own life. Right. And it's a more joyful place to be. Doesn't mean that we ignore reality. It doesn't mean that we ignore the hard things. It just helps us have a sort of a framework for dealing with hard things and dealing with difficult conversations and difficult subjects where there is a lot of disagreement. And there's a lot of disagreement for a reason. And we just got to get to what the reason is, digging deeper. It's why do I feel so attached to this particular thought or feeling or thing or belief? Why is it? So it may not be it may have a lot of facts based on my own life experiences that might not have been yours.
Right.
So does that invalidate it? I don't think so. I think it makes it more valid, more worth talking about and saying, right now I get that that's not your lived experience.
Yeah.
Now I get it. It's different. And so now how do we find some common ground there? I think it's there used to be a thing called debate schools, and that was such a good skill set to learn. Because it is a skill to learn. It's something to hone. And that is to be able to actually argue the premise from both sides.
That's the real skill of debating.
And be convincing enough to convince somebody to come to your side, even though you might not personally believe it.
Right.
It's because you've thought through the argument well enough to be able to justify the premise of it, et cetera, and give the evidence and the arguments for it in a way that is people can say, oh, okay, that makes sense. So to me, we need more of that. I'd love to see more debate clubs pop up again. In the name of civility as part of a civil practice to be able to say, look, it's not about not arguing. That's not the point. It's about how we argue and how we communicate with each other. I said that I believe very strongly that democracy is at risk with no civility, because it's not about shutting down and being so proper that we never say anything offensive to anybody and therefore never do anything. And we're just all, this one big homogenous blob that doesn't have any disagreement or can't disagree. That's not it at all. It's the opposite of that. It's the ability to argue your point. It's the ability to have a voice in a way that can be heard. Because that's the hard part, is that people who feel persecuted, people who don't feel that their part of the experience is part of the equation, or that somebody doesn't have any sympathy or empathy, then they don't hear it. So how do we have it so that we can talk about a subject that we disagree on, that we can hear each other? That's the point of civility to me. And that's the salvation of democracy, because free speech is the cornerstone of democracy. And the ability to have a conversation around this is vital for us to maintain a democracy and to be able to argue these points and have our voices heard. One voice is not a democracy. One opinion, one way of doing something is not a democracy. And that's why I feel we actually, to be really serious, I feel that we are in jeopardy at this time in history in a way that we may not have in the past. But, I've been on the earth only this so long. And so that's just my lived experience. And maybe there's been other opportunities in this world that democracy has been at as much risk or greater risk. But right now we are facing a time when I believe civility can play a big role in helping us come to a place that we can have really great debates about what democracy is and what it should be and where the future of the country should be.
It's interesting. I had a conversation with a good friend just yesterday on the topic of, is democracy in jeopardy? And my take on it is actually, no, it's not. But that's because of my political science background and my understanding of political history here in the United States. Simply because I spent a lot of time studying politics in the 19th century. You think stuff that's bad now? Oh my God, you have no idea. Today is calm by comparison to the 19th century. So that's why I have no concern that democracy is going away. It's not going away. But I can certainly understand why people are concerned about the civility issue. That, certainly that makes a difference. Not so much in terms of whether democracy is going to go away, but in terms of whether or not people are going to find other ways of resolving their differences, because what does tend to happen when civility goes away is that's when violence tends to come through.
Right.
That's really what the issue is there, I think.
But
no, I have no concern about violence. Democracy is not going anywhere.
Some of these things that are happening in the neighborhoods that we're seeing on the news, and just so many things we could talk about that are just so sad and disturbing. On the micro level within communities, but then from a macro level of obviously cross border disputes that could lead to all out war, and we've seen plenty of war. War is going on all the time, but does that mean that it has to? And so, I guess in a more perfect union, it would be nice to see a day that there isn't that kind of stuff, but human beings are human beings, and we disagree with each other, and sometimes it gets to the ugliest part of our humanity. And
I think you touched on something really important, which is that we get to these positions that we hold, we get to these opinions, these beliefs because of our personal experiences that are different from everybody else's experience. I think that's really vital, in part because of what I've experienced doing this show. And the best way I can think of to explain it quickly, you talked in terms of the different perspectives, what I would call the contrast or polarity of life, which is actually one of the things that makes it so great. And as you pointed out, if it was all homogenous, we wouldn't want to be here. It wouldn't be fun. There'd be nothing interesting about being here at all if everybody had the same beliefs. And that's very true. But there's also a second piece, I think, that goes along with that. The second piece that goes along with it is if a person is trying to convince somebody else of something else, they have like a perspective, something they're trying to teach or whatever. If they haven't been through, we talked about failure, if they haven't been through a failure associated with it, if they haven't been through a challenge, a difficult trip, whatever, they really have nothing to teach. You have to have gone through that stuff in order to have something to share with somebody else that's going to be helpful to them.
That's where personal growth comes from.
Yeah. I've had one time, I really enjoy harping on this guy. I had one guy the only guy who's ever on the program whose episode I didn't publish. And the reason it's the only one. I've never named him. I never will name him. But the reason I didn't publish the episode was he became a millionaire on his first try as an 18-year-old. And there's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. But what came out of it was he wanted to teach other people how to be millionaires, and he couldn't do it because he had nothing to teach. All he did was, well, it worked. That was his whole story. It worked the first time.
Luck and preparation happened to meet.
Yeah. And an interesting thing went along with that. Because he didn't have those kinds of adversity stories to tell, he was kind of still stuck in the teenage boy mindset that basically says, well, you got to rag on everything.
Oh, boy.
So literally, he came onto the program, and I had a co-host that day who couldn't make it. She wasn't able to make it that particular day, so it was just him and me talking. He had read the co-host's website. She was a coach, and she had said something on the website that he didn't like. That's fine, no problem.
Boy.
He starts ragging on her while she's not there about, well, how could she possibly write, anything like that? She's totally wrong, blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking, she's not even here to defend herself. I mean, what kind of a coward are you? Come on.
But I was only going to bring this up if she didn't show up.
Yeah.
You wouldn't say that to her face.
Really courageous.
Yeah.
Very courageous. Oh, yeah. But the point is, I realized, it took me a while to put it together, but I realized afterward, that's why he was such a bad guest. He had nothing to contribute.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Lack of experience, lack of perspective.
Yeah. He just didn't have anything there.
He was lucky.
So I now appreciate somebody who's been through hell and back. I appreciate somebody who's got something to share. They've got a story to tell because I can learn something from them.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're here for the Cinderella stories.
Have you been able to look back and see if he's achieved anything else or been able to repeat the process? Or
honestly, I haven't looked. I had no interest in looking. I didn't want to.
Exactly. Well, I think that the richness in life is hearing of the experiences of other people, and one of the and their stories and their experiences and how all of this kind of comes together. And one of the things with working with international dignitaries, one of the reasons I really loved working in protocol was because, especially when we traveled internationally with the president, was I love cross-cultural stuff. I love foreign languages, and I love traveling. And one thing about Europe that's kind of neat is that it's so, like within a half an hour, you can be in a different culture altogether. And it's like this little place that, just like the United States is so big. And yes, we actually have different cultures within the United States too, but it's not so obvious as the national dress changes and you go from Switzerland to France to Germany to England to whatever, all these, Italy, and think how different it is in that Spain, in all that little area in a sense. And I loved that. That is so cool. I don't want it all to be like when they became the EU and they had one monetary unit. Mm-hmm. They went from each the lira and the peso, all these different things. I was bummed because I thought that was so fun. That was so neat.
Right.
I mean, it made sense from a long-term economic standpoint to maybe do that, but it took away the uniqueness, the individuality of those spaces. That's just one little example. And I love the fact that in the United States, we can kind of get almost anything we want to from all over the world now. Whereas when I first graduated from college, I brought back weird foods from all over the world because we didn't have them here. Mm-hmm. And it was so cool, that there was these different things. And so while I love having access to all that stuff in the United States and that it's easier now because we have better trade and everything, It was so cool to have it be different and unique.
Yeah.
And to celebrate our difference, celebrate our uniqueness, rather than condemn it, rather than look at it with fear, rather than be afraid of anything that isn't exactly like us, and find a way to appreciate the difference in somebody and some other culture. And so it's just amazing what you can learn, and I love it. And so I don't want us all to be the same. I don't want us all dress alike. I don't want everybody to, be exactly like me. I want something different. That's what the richness of this entire ecosystem, the whole globe is so rich. And
who would want to be in a life where it was all, like you said, to use the word used before, homogenous? Who would want to live in that world?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of dull.
We all exit really quickly.
I just pictured oatmeal.
That's like, have you guys ever read the book, The Giver?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's exactly like that. It's or seen the movie. Watch the movie. Definitely watch the movie.
Very good. I'll have to watch it. I don't think I've seen the movie. I'll have to go look it up.
Came out a few years ago. I was like, The Giver was one of my favorite books growing up. So I was like, yes, let's make a movie.
It's just, we have such amazing, the fact that we are all people, right? We have all these things. We have brains. We have all these standard equipment, but how amazingly unique is every single model? Every model is different. Mm-hmm. We may have shared DNA with family members, but none of us are the same.
Nope.
Everybody who's a parent, I'm not, but I'm a child in a family. Every parent knows that every child is unique.
Yeah.
And even if you raise them with the same value system, with the same lessons, with the same things, birth order, timing, what's happening in the world at that moment, all of these things come into and DNA in general, make us different. So I think that's beautiful. And that another is I would like to see us celebrate that more than condemn it.
Mm-hmm. And the beautiful thing is that the more that we celebrate that, we meaning those of us who are participating in this conversation right here, the more that people do celebrate stuff like that. That's the ripple effect.
I was
even
just
if we aren't seeing
it,
right? I mean, we may not see it. We may not be aware of it, when it's happening somewhere else. Mm-hmm. But that's one thing I've come to learn is it always ripples. It always has effect every time.
It's such a gift to give somebody, talk about the giver. It's such a gift to give somebody an earnest compliment. And it may not be a compliment on their looks or their smarts or whatever it happens to be. Maybe it's something like, I really enjoyed hearing how open you were about this. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed hearing about your upbringing. I really resonated your experience in school. Mm-hmm. Whatever it is, being able to communicate back to somebody an appreciation, a gratitude, appreciative application of what you've heard, it shows that you were really listening and that you and expressing the appreciation from me to you gives me those chemical boosts. I get the benefit as much as you do.
Yeah, everybody gets that benefit. Because appreciation, that's another one of those things that has a contagion aspect to it. Mm-hmm.
It's going to be contagious on anything. Wouldn't it be nice to have it be love and understanding?
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're going to be contagious, it might as well be something that you actually want to contage. Is that a word?
You actually want to spread around.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
People want to catch.
I think it just invented a new verb, contage. Okay.
Contage.
Exactly.
Can you conjugate the verb to contage? No, it won't go there.
In the pluperfect?
That's right.
I know I couldn't do it in English. I don't know if I can do it in any other language.
Well, the cool part is because it's a new word, we can make it whatever we want.
Exactly.
You want the pluperfect? Here it is. Okay, I just made it up.
Contage.
Oh my goodness, this is fun. This is really good. I've enjoyed this.
Well, so what are you guys going to do today to bring joy to the world?
I'm going dancing.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
Yeah. Ooh, what am I going to do today? I've already done what bring joy to the world. I work today, so I work for a suicide hotline. So that's what I did to bring joy to the world.
What an amazing thing, and what an amazing way to think about it as joy, because most people's first thought would go to how sad, how horrible, but what you do is help somebody find their joy.
Yes.
In that moment. Mm-hmm. Because all you're trying, if I'm understanding the way some of it works, is you just, for that moment, they just need to get through that moment.
Yeah.
In order to start again.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, that's really beautiful. Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
How long have you been doing it?
Since last October.
Oh my gosh. Did you have to have a lot of training?
We did about a week's worth of training, but it was a lot to learn, and I had to take different tests and be certified by the state and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Wow. Thank you for doing that. It's huge. That's a big service, and I can imagine at the end of the day, you have probably, you have to be careful not to take on the weight.
Yeah.
But you're serious, you're focused, your energy's all in there. So it's got to be a little exhausting too.
No, I take good care of myself. The company's very good about self-care. So they make sure we have things like, we're having yoga on these 2 Tuesdays if you want to come, or we're doing this, or they sent us, snacks. They sent us Goodwill snacks. They were like all healthy and stuff, but like, here, snack on some stuff while you're, on the lines.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah, it's nice.
By the way, something, Shelby, that you need to know about Alex. Every week I introduce her on the show as the queen of personal boundaries because she has like the most solid personal boundaries you will ever encounter in your life.
Very healthy.
Yeah.
And
I try.
the kind of the trick in that is for somebody like me who has had to evolve to develop those, the people pleasers in the world, right? Who want to go out of their way to make sure to help people. Obviously you go out of your way to help people every day in what you do, but the having those boundaries to be for self-preservation, it's the oxygen mask.
Yep.
You can't help somebody if you're failing. So
exactly,
keep those healthy boundaries up without blocking out the world so that you don't get the benefit of reality and life and all the juice that comes with that, all the good, messy stuff because life is messy. And if we try to insulate ourselves from that too much, then we're missing out on a lot too.
So true.
So that's a really special place and a special ability to be able to say, I get that, but that's not for me.
Right.
It's okay. It's not for me today. It's not for me tomorrow. Maybe some other day. But
probably not.
Yeah.
Right now, this is what's going to be. I got to take care of myself, and I respect that you may not be pleased with that. But
that's not a me problem.
I'm not trying to hurt you or do anything against you. I'm just trying to make sure that my life is happy and healthy and balanced.
Exactly.
So I can show up for the people I need to show up for.
Can't pour from an empty cup.
That's exactly right. That's beautiful. I love it. I'm so happy that you're doing that. And, thank you. I think one of my passions is around, and I don't really, it's kind of empty in the way I'm talking about it because I don't really technically do much about it, is I've always felt that human trafficking is, and certainly people who could become suicidal who are in that circumstance, what the dirty trick that does to somebody's psyche and everything. And so I think of human trafficking and bondage and human slavery as being the most important thing that another human could do to another human being. And so I've donated for my civility book, I donate part of the proceeds to stopping that, but I don't physically do anything. I keep kind of saying to myself,
well, that is a form of physically doing. I mean, let's be honest, that really is.
Bit, right. But it's not, I'm not out there on the front line. I'm hopefully I'm contributing to people who can be out there on the front line to do something about it. I wouldn't mind getting more engaged in it, physically. I just have a few responsibilities right now that kind of limit that. So I'm trying to do what I can, and to speak up about it and things like that. But it's to me, what you do is salvation and that, to free somebody from a bondage of psychological bondage, emotional bondage, or physical bondage is a great gift. And that's something that's not everybody cares to do.
True story.
This has been really, really cool conversation. And it's kind of sad that we have to draw to a close, but we have to do that at some point. But before we do, there's a couple things we got to nail down. First of all, somebody wants to find out about you or they want to find out about your books. What's the best way for people to reach out and learn more about Shelby Joy Scarbrough?
So you can go to ShelbyScarbrough.com. You can go to ShelbyJoyScarbrough.com, I think.
Both.
Yes. And if you misspell my last name, you'll probably end up there too, because that's so common that I bought the misspelled word.
You bought that one too? Okay.
So it's B-R-O-U-G-H, but it spells very common with B-O-R-O. So I redirect, those websites to me too. So ShelbyScarbrough.com. Just come see me there. There's lots of stuff there. I have a whole shop called joyjourney.life you can get you through that or directly. And it's all things joy. Lots of products. And I don't think things make you happy in your life, but I also think that with these things that they can bring a little joy and, and they are sort of, to me, the embodiment of joy. They're either things that made me joyful or that they actually say joy.
Okay. And both qualify. That's
yes.
I like that.
It all counts.
Yes, exactly. So, my mom called me the other day and said, I need a gift for a friend. So she came shopping in my shop. So it was very nice.
Very cool. And there's one last thing that Alex knows I do with all guests. And Alex, I think you have to agree. This is probably the most apropos time to do it with this particular guest today, right?
For sure.
I like to make it a point to recognize what we were talking about earlier, that we have that ripple effect, that you're doing this podcast. I know you do other podcasts. You wrote books. There are a lot of different ways you're putting stuff out there to the world. And there are many people that you'll never meet, you'll never see, you never have met, you never will meet, who are receiving that and often benefiting from it in ways that you don't know about. And I think it's important to recognize it. So on behalf of those people that you've never met and that you've never seen, that you never will meet, you never will see, thank you for what you've been putting out. Thank you for what you've been doing, because you're making a huge difference in this world.
Thank you. If one person, sets out on a joy journey or a personal practice of civility because of this, then that's awesome. And because they're going to influence other people, and it's just going to keep going. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Gotta love a ripple effect. Ripple effect.
Yeah.
Is so cool. They really are. So thank you guys so much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.